The day of the accident was Friday, July 10th. Temperature was probably 90 degrees, mostly sunny. Normal day for the city of Raleigh.
Started the day off and we went to the grocery store because the truck company, it was our day to cook. So the four of us jumped on the ladder and we took off to the grocery store and got our groceries.
I had been online for 3 months and I was still in my probationary period, and that day I had been floated to the ladder to complete my training.
We're heading back to the station and went through some of the downtown district, just getting some more time in behind the wheel because I'd only been on the truck 3 months, and stopped at the train station when we saw Rescue 2.
So we stopped on Cabarrus Street that day, and we were just kind of joking, talking with them, and it was really hard for me to hear. So at that time, I had to put my window up so that I could hear what was going on, and that's when the house fire call came in.
And as we're sitting there, we get a dispatch to a structure fire.
I could hear everything on the radio, on the headset, and Captain Page said, well, let me get dressed.
At that point, I told my driver, Tommy McGee, I'm going to step out of the rig and I'm going to put my gear on. I unlatched my seat belt.
And I immediately grabbed my bunker pants, and I was trying to put those on. And by this time, Captain Page had hopped back into the truck, and we were gone. And we were going, and I've always worn my seatbelt. And this particular situation is the first time I ever actually got a call while I was already on the truck, and we were in motion. And as a new firefighter, the last thing I want to do is to hold my captain up or to hold my lieutenant up. I don't want to be the one that makes people have to wait on me. So I undid my seatbelt.
As we were approaching Dawson Street on Cabarrus, I remember thinking, okay, I got to get my seatbelt latched back. I remember holding that seatbelt in my hand, and that's about all I can remember of that. But I do remember thinking I need to get that belt latched.
Started making the turn, and right into the turn, I mean, we were geared up for a house fire, structure fire. You're always reacting that little bit more faster.
As we were going into that Dawson and South Street intersection, I was leaning over the dog box, hitting the channel, and I remember feeling the truck shift. It was a real hard shift, and I was looking out the windshield, and I could see a car sitting in the turning lane on South Street. And I remember thinking, we're hitting this turn a little hard.
As we approached the intersection, I saw an SUV at the stop line. So I turned the back steering wheel to kick out the back end so I wouldn't run over top of that car. And I kicked it around and lined the tiller back up with the tractor and thought everything was fine. And then all of a sudden, you heard that god-awful yawing or squalling of the tires.
It was that deep squall you hear in that skid. And I looked in the mirror and I could see the trailer was up on one tire.
You get unbalanced, and that's what I thought it was, and I thought it was going to level back out and everything was going to be fine. But I realized that it wasn't, and I realized that we weren't coming back. We were going.
And at that point, I remember feeling my right shoulder really slammed hard into that door, and I was looking out the window into the mirror to check my tiller operator.
I remember Captain saying, Tommy, and I realized at that point we were turning over, and it went through my mind, well, maybe if I hit the brake real quick and steer to the right, I can pull us out of it.
The ladder started to move in front of me, and all I saw was the ladder starting to roll. And I remember telling them, whoa, and it happened very slow, it seemed like.
And I could hear the tiller operator yelling, whoa, 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 whoa. And at that point, it's like everything locked into slow motion.
We had one ladder truck overturned, 3 firefighters on the ground.
Just held on and closed my eyes after it started rolling because I didn't think I could do anything. It was happening so quick. So I just closed my eyes and just thought this is going to be really bad.
The whole time I was thinking I almost had my seatbelt on, and I didn't. I didn't get it in time. And I can't visually remember everything, but I remember what was going through my head and just praying that whatever happens, I just don't want it to hurt.
I'm looking out the window at the sidewalk. Is there anybody on the sidewalk? What are we going to hit? Where are we headed? Because at this point, I knew we were turning over. I knew it.
So basically at that point, as fast as it went and all that thought process, and I just held onto the steering wheel and basically just waited till everything was over with.
As the truck was turning, and I remember looking at the sidewalk and thinking, this is going to hurt. This is going to hurt.
I could see everything going on around me. I could see Captain Page. It was like he was being thrown to and fro everywhere.
But I still had that seatbelt in my hand. And it hit, and I can remember the sound of the metal bending, the gravel flying. I just had this big numb feeling. And then I remember this big impact. And then everything just went blank from there.
And I remember the windshield flying out and just seeing Captain Page kind of falls out the front windshield when it hits and on his back.
And I'm laying on the ground and I can feel the dirt in my mouth. And I'm trying to get my breath back. And then I take that deep breath, that first breath after you've had the breath knocked out of you. And as I'm sitting up, then I can feel the pain in my hip. And I remember sitting up on my hands, trying to get up on my knees and looking at my radio on the ground, my handheld radio, and it was in pieces. It was, I'd say at least 3 pieces. Thought for sure I'd broken my leg. All I could think at the time is, okay, I've got to get some help down here. I got to find out where my people are at, and I've got to get some help down here.
Headquarters, did you copy there was an overturn, ladder 4?
I can remember seeing Tommy. Tommy came around in front of me, and I'm looking up at him, and he's got that look on his face. It's hard to describe. And immediately I'm like, "Where's Kelly?" The firefighter was in the rear, and I need somebody to check on Jason, my tiller operator. I was pretty sure and felt in my heart that I had lost my tiller operator.
So I go back in, and I look in the back, and Kelly's nowhere to be found. And I'm like, man, all kinds of thoughts going through my mind. Like, where's Kelly? Is she underneath the rig? Is she been thrown out?
And the first thing that I hit was that window that I had just put up. So I knew that if I hadn't had that window up, I would have been out.
When I opened up my eyes, I had to close them again because of all the glass and the debris. And the rescue truck had got there. And all I could think was, is everybody all right? And he said, you're bleeding pretty bad, and we're going to have to cut you out. And all I could think was, then I got scared.
It was really just seemed like mass chaos, and really all I can think about is how many people I've hurt in this wreck, it's going through your mind.
I just remember opening my eyes and looking out the front window, which had been shattered, and I saw my captain, and the adrenaline, everything just kind of kicked in, and I just got up and immediately went to my captain.
I took a pretty good blow in the head. Things fade in and out. What was going on at the time, I remember asking, how's Jason? Where's Jason at? And it seemed like, and they may have answered me, but I don't remember it. I don't remember anybody ever telling me Jason's okay.
I just couldn't open up my eyes because my face felt like it was burning. But later on, come to find out that I was cut all the way across my head and a bunch of chunks of skin were missing. And then the paramedics, I overheard them calling it a trauma. And I was like, who's a trauma? I was thinking about Steve and Kelly up front because I'd already saw Tommy.
Kelly was sitting there with me, and I remember looking at her face, and she just had that look of terror in her face. She just, we all had been through a pretty tough point at that time. And I'm trying to get a grip on the situation because I felt like I needed to be in control, but there was no control there.
You just had a total of 3 patients, 3 PIs. What did you use to ask from this location?
What I've learned the most from this is, as a culture in the fire service, it seems like everybody's always focused on when you receive that call, we got to go, 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 go. slowing down a little bit, checking those intersections, to me, is one thing that we're going to do more often.
I have learned that seatbelts are very important, and I will never, ever go anywhere without wearing it. Me getting there is important, and my safety is important, along with the rest of the crew. Seatbelts
are the key. It saved my life that day, because if I didn't have it on, I'd have been straight across that yard.
As a company officer, making sure everybody's wearing that seatbelt. I took mine off, and I swear I cannot remember. I feel like I had relatched that belt, but at the same time, I went out the front windshield. Was my mind so focused on making that run that I just forgot about that belt?
Never thought of all the people that was associated with me going to the fire calls, how it was my responsibility to make sure they got there safely and that they got back to the fire station safely. Looking back, I thought I knew where the line was. It really has made an impact on the way I think about that if I'm driving a piece of equipment.
I was busy changing that radio channel that we blew a red light. I don't even remember slowing down for it. And in my mind, I assumed it was green because I wasn't looking at it. Now, let's slow down. Let's take these turns slower. Let's stop for these stoplights. Let's stop for the stop signs and see our way clear. If we would have stopped for that stoplight, this truck would have never turned over.
The key is we look after our families as much as we can. Well, when we're at work, we look after the citizens as much as we can. But sometimes we take that extra risk, and we're looking after the customers by trying to rush to get there, or the citizens to get there, and it's like we're putting our families on the back burner, so we're actually not looking after our families anymore. And I don't drive like I used to. I mean, it's taken me some deep down inside, looking at my soul, thinking about it. And I love driving. I'm not scared to drive, but it was hard, and thinking about it every day.
I can see this accident probably affected me more as a firefighter than any call that I'd been on previously. I eventually got to the hospital on that day, and I just can't help thinking about their moms and their dads and daughters and just brothers and sisters there at the hospital, and it's kind of being overwhelmed, like, well, I'm the reason now that they're here.
What can you do differently to prevent this accident from happening again? And that number one thing always comes up is training.
Raleigh Fire Department has been very much in favor of getting training for the new tiller that we have out here.
So we started researching training programs, tiller driver operator programs, what the different programs were out there. And most all programs were running along the same lines, the same type of training. And we talked to Seattle Fire Department, and we took a look at that program and said, well, this looks a little more in-depth, a little more informative than what we've been finding. So we trained towards that program and learned a lot more from it.
The Seattle Fire Department has been willing to come out and train us on it and go through their training program.
Through this training, I think we can get across that it's not just another piece of equipment, and it's a whole different animal compared to the rest of the rigs that we ride around on. Going through this training, I think it's very important that each person being able to drive it has to go through some actual training and classroom portion and road course training. And it's important that the front driver and the tiller driver really kind of click together and they know what each other's thinking, know what each other's doing.
I think it'll help our department grow, and it'll help the newer tiller drivers and some of the older ones. It'll help them.
Us here at Raleigh Fire Department and partnering together with Seattle Fire Department have really stepped up a notch on our training.
How the tractor reacts, how the trailer reacts to the tractor, back and forward. It's been an outstanding program, and that to me is going to make us all better drivers. And not just drivers, it's company officers too. Company officers need to sit in this seat and they need to realize what this truck is doing, because If you're not aware of what that truck is doing, then you're missing out as a company officer of not understanding what the two guys are doing front and back. We need to make sure we're trained correctly when we go out and operate these vehicles so that this won't happen again.